Look, we've got to call out the ugliness in this voice debate. Many of you will be voting no, and that is the beauty of democracy. Everyone's vote is equal. And as I keep saying, there are quite legitimate arguments, of course, for voting against the voice. The trouble is we aren't hearing them very often. The No campaign is increasingly shrill and misleading. The No campaigners were quick to point out the overreach by Yes advocates, condemning personal attacks, which is fair enough, and I've joined them in that. But they've got to live up to those same standards themselves, and they're not doing that. I've detailed here repeatedly, for instance, how they are deliberately misleading people about the relevance and the length of the Uluru statement. They constantly pretend that the one-page Uluru statement is really 18 or 26 or 120 pages long. This conspiracy accuses Labor of signing up to every idea and grievance raised in dozens of pages of background notes and meeting summaries and histories from the Uluru statement process. This is pretty deceptive, and the ABC's Media Watch pointed that out last night.
The Uluru statement is expressed on one page, but there are many more pages of notes and background, which it must be said the Australian public are not voting on, where matters like a treaty and reparations are raised. So, should Facebook have labelled her claim false? A spokesperson for Meta told Media Watch it wasn't us.
This fact check was applied by an independent fact checker and not Meta.
And that is true. But it was Meta that slapped it on. And given that there may be some point in what Credlin is saying, we think a disputed label would be more appropriate.
Yeah, it's clear the Uluru statement is one page. The other pages bandied about are no longer secret Uluru statement. They're not a longer or secret Uluru statement. But of course, people shouldn't be censored for mischaracterising them. And certainly Facebook's censorship of some Sky News material is outrageous. And thankfully, the ABC has even pulled them up on that one. But note now that many people who have been talking about a longer Uluru statement are now correcting themselves and pretending they were always talking about the Uluru statement and its supporting documents. A welcome revision, even if they never admitted their error. If the No case was confident of their rational arguments, then it would prosecute them and not resort to these tactics. But elsewhere, they're getting even more strident. I mean, have a look at the cover of the latest Spectator Australia magazine. It shows a blank cheque made out to Aborigines. Just what is this supposed to mean? What sort of response is this supposed to encourage? I'll leave you to judge. Many prominent No campaigners were involved in the Conservative Political Action Committee, or CPAC, conference on the weekend. It's an American-style Conservative conference, and No campaigner Warren Mundine chairs the organisation, with other leading voice opponents such as Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price and Tony Abbott lined up as speakers. Former Keating Labor government minister Gary Johns shared his characteristically, shall we say, tough views on Indigenous matters.
We have conspired through all sorts of means to keep Aboriginal people out on collective title, outside the economy, being Aboriginal. And I need to tell you that being Aboriginal is not enough. It's not your life. If you sit there outside the economy and playing out the role of an Aboriginal person, you will die young.
Now, these sentiments, or perhaps the way they are expressed, offended some people, including the Prime Minister. But have a listen to what John said here on Sky News last night.
The Yes case does not want to answer the simple question: why can't some Aboriginal children read, write and speak English? Why can't they integrate into our open society, just as Noel Pearson has, just as Marcia Langton has, just as Jacinta and Warren have?
Now, what on earth has that question got to do with the Yes case? You see, this has become the tactic of the No campaign. Raise any Indigenous issue, complain about any aspect of Indigenous activism, raise fears about treaties, reparations or even welcomes to country, and use that against the voice. Now, these are all legitimate areas for debate and discussion, of course, but the thing is, none of these issues are what we'll be voting on. The referendum question is about recognising Indigenous Australians in the Constitution through a voice. And the Voice is advisory only, so it can't do anything except make suggestions to government. It can't deliver a treaty, it can't impose reparations, and it certainly can't ensure that everyone passes English at school. Only Parliament can do these things. Now, you'd hope a Voice might have some useful advice on these and other issues. Issues which, by the way, will be debated every day, voice or no voice. Still, I want to show you something a little more controversial from that CPAC conference. Have a look at this comedian.
All weekend I've been here and you've been a great audience. Yeah, but Adolf Hitler also had a great audience.
Well, that got a bit of a laugh, but then he turned his attention to Indigenous issues.
I'd like to acknowledge the traditional rent seekers, past, present and emerging. But seriously, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners, violent black men. I hope there are some real feminists in the audience who appreciate the part truth of that joke.
Not too many laughs there, hey? Which means the audience either thought he wasn't funny or thought he was serious. Who knows? But he ploughed on.
Interesting that Woman Basher Bennelong is the name given to the land of the Sydney Opera House, whereas his victim and wife, Barangaroo, gets just a dubious casino, PwC offices and sandstone cutaways built over the land named after her.
What a barrel of laughs, hey? Can't we do better for a laugh than this? And can't we do better when it comes to debating the Voice?